This is Simmply Lovaii, and you're listening to the expert with a heart.
But there were some question marks on, really not too much done for companies, really not too much done for the economy to kickstart it.
Campaigns, or there are some clauses here or there. But I believe this is a big boost to consumption. This is a big, I would say, thumbs up to Indian middle class families.
Finance Minister has actually given the tax cut for the corporate not in the budget but outside of budget. That's a big one. We don't know. No one was prepared for all those things. Demonetization happened not in budget but after the budget.
Possibly the attention was that, let's just make sure there's enough money in the hands of the middle class.
The biggest multiplier to GDP is actually investment.
Welcome to Simmply Lovaii. You're catching me, Ahalya, with the expert with a heart. CEO and Managing Director of IMMPL, International Money Matters Pvt. Limited. And we are catching you at an opportune time because the union budget was just announced. Now, we couldn't be that time sensitive because we did have to do a little bit of thinking on what needed to be dissected. You're hearing news about it, I'm sure, until the next week. So we got Lovaii in, as well as two more experts who are going to be joining us to really understand what we're dealing with post-budget. So welcome, Lovaii. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
So excited to get into this, and then we'll go into the specifics. But also, I did want to first off ask you, when you heard the budget announcement this year, what were your thoughts? And was it like a good start to your 2025?
So, what happens is when the budget comes in, I have sort of three-way thoughts. What's going to be the impact on the economy? What's going to be the impact on institutions or corporates? And then what's going to be the impact on individuals?
Okay.
And I think this time the attention was all on the individuals. And that turned out to be fairly good. But there were some question marks on really not too much done for companies, really not too much done for the economy to kickstart it. But maybe there's global uncertainty, and I think they decided to stay away from trying to tinker with that.
Yeah, because we don't have a crystal ball. But,
Exactly.
But do you think that that's because they're not going to announce things going forward, or because, pre-budget, there was a lot of I want to say tension in the air on the individual front. So do you think that's why it was the focus there? And then with corporate and economy, it's going to keep rolling out as the year progresses?
So I think the budget preparation goes for a fairly long period of time. So I'm hoping they didn't get influenced by the last minute sort of noise. But I think possibly the attention was that, let's just make sure there's enough money in the hands of the middle class. So that was definitely the focus. I suppose the situations in the world and with changing sort of moods and the winds, I think they're waiting cautiously to move on other things.
Okay. And when you look at an event like the union budget, is this something that you feel is still very influential and relevant? How relevant do you think it is to investors out there today?
I think it's relevant because a lot of attention is placed on it. There's a budget, so everyone is sitting down and sometimes sitting for long periods of time. This one was relatively shorter. So I think there is attention. There is, the newspapers are splashed with what's happening in the budget. There are opinions, columns, podcasts which are going on. So, yeah,
We are
there is
post.
attention.
We are post.
So there is attention around it, and maybe it triggers some action, some thought. So to that extent, yes, important.
Okay, perfect. So what were the standouts that you want to call out right at, on the onset of this series? It's going to be a two-parter because we're going to be talking about the general, impact areas, and then we're going to move into behavioral impact that this has on investors. So any things you want to call out before we start?
So I think, like I said, the attention was on the individual. For the individual, the big thing, of course, was that if you have income up to 12 lakh, excluding capital gains, it's tax-free effectively. So that was a big one. Few other smaller things also did come out, saying that residential properties, you could have had earlier only one extra self-occupied property on which you paid no taxes. Now it's two.
Okay.
So it's actually in some way incentivizing people to hold on to their third property if they have it, no rush to sell it. The piece on foreign remittance, if you transferred money overseas under liberalized remittance scheme, they've sort of increased the limit up to which they will not charge TCS, which is 10 lakh instead of 7 lakh. So minor change, but yes, there is a change there. And I think there is some increase in the TDS for an income for senior citizens from 2.4 to 5 lakhs. Also for rent payments, they have said that you don't need to deduct tax if you're paying rent up to 6 lakh instead of 2.4 lakh.
Okay.
So small tinkering, but I couldn't see too much of tinkering on the corporate side or the economy side.
Yeah, they're probably holding off, like you said. And before we started the recording, you said something really interesting about going back 4 years and being able to file that, for your taxes now. Yeah. I have a two-part question for that. One, what is the motivation to increase the time limit? And then two, how is that going to benefit, which stakeholders are going to benefit?
So I think the idea is that they want more and more people to file their returns. Sometimes what happens is just out of ignorance, you have not calculated a particular income in the previous year. And there used to be a time limit that within 3 months before the end of that financial year, which is effectively 31st December, you can't file taxes for that previous year. They extended it last year and said you could go back 2 years. They've, I think, found success that a lot more people have come and filed voluntarily and said, by the way, I had this income, I need to pay tax on it. So can you please take the tax? Because in the past, when you couldn't do it, you calculated it and then put fingers crossed and said, hopefully no one will get after me.
Yeah.
So they've increased that limit to 4 years. Because you have to keep in mind that they will charge you extra on that tax calculation. It's 25% if you've gone back 1 year, 50% 2 years, 60% 3 years, 70% 4 years. But I think it's allowing you to come out voluntarily and declare and get everything in order, which I think is a good thing in this day of very rapid digitalization. I think one hears often that the income tax department's digital backbone is far, far better than many of the top tech giants. So yes, one has to be careful.
Yeah, but there is a taxation on your conscientiousness now. There is that. Okay, so let's dive into conversation now with two more experts with more heart. Please welcome Rahul Jain, Senior Vice President, Research and Advisory, IMMPL and Aishvarya Dadheech, Founder and Chief Investment Officer, Fident Asset Management Pvt. Limited. Hi, Rahul. Hi, Aishwarya. Thank you so much for being with us today and so excited to have you here.
Hello, Alia.
Thank you, Alia.
Okay, so before we get into the nitty-gritty of it all, I think one of the biggest questions that always comes up is, can we take this union budget announcement for face value or at face value? Or is there some fine print that we're missing? And because of all of the, the taxation initiatives that have been announced and the brackets sort of increasing, right? One big burning question is this going to benefit the middle class truly? Or is it benefiting only one particular segment of society? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I think that's a great question. And I remember people doing that every year, right? But I think this year it was completely different. The kind of change that they've announced is unprecedented, right? We remember this government when they came in power in 2040. They started with GST and all those implementation. Come 2019, they started with CapEx story. And nobody on the street was even have dreamt up about the kind of saving that they've given to taxpayers, right? So you all have heard about there will be no taxes for income to 1 lakh rupees per annum. But if you look at the number, this number is for sure. So when they started this number, I myself was surprised to see that. And I was trying to understand whether there are fine claims or there are some clauses here or there. But I believe this is a big, big boost to consumption. This is a big, I would say, thumbs up to Indian middle class families. If you look at the kind of numbers of return that they have filed every year, they are close to 8.75 income taxpayer. I would believe that they would close to 75-80% of those people who will have disproportionate gain on account of this tax break. So we've heard of a number of close to 1 lakh crore of saving. 70% of it will accrue to household which are earning anywhere between 12 lakh to say 50 lakh. That is a huge number. That will be a very big boost to consumption as well as a discretionary. And I can tell you there are no hidden clauses there.
Okay, so, if we're going to take the macro perspective of things, just taking from that little hint of consumption from Aishwarya, how is this union budget really going to impact the Indian economic growth story? Is it going to have any impact on it?
Union budget, I remember much earlier, there used to be two budgets. There was a railway budget as well. But now, over time, what we have seen is there are a lot of consolidation during this budget. And during the year also, we see a lot of announcement that keeps on coming. So, but if you ask me, this specific budget, yes, it's a bold budget, it's a game changer. But if I zoom out and then look at the overall economy, then there are certain sectors which are also very big sectors. Which industry was looking at it if there could be some other announcement, some other benefit that could have been given to say manufacturing as a sector. We are talking about maybe consumption because this is some kind of a income which is a disposable income in taxpayers' hand. But as a corporate, they must be thinking, they must be anticipating if anything from our company, our businesses, if anything could have come in. That, according to me, has not come up. So, but as I said, there are so many other events that will take place, so much so that before the budget, there was RBI big policy that got announced, which was again a very, very critical one, but we give a lot of emphasis on the budget. But this one, I think, is an aha moment for a lot of taxpayers because it has definitely created a lot of impact on taxpayers.
So for our viewers out there, when you say events that will happen, what kind of events are we talking about?
We don't know, but for example, every 2 months there are RBI policy which comes in. There are, finance minister has actually given the tax cut for the corporate, not in the budget, but outside of budget. That's a big one. We don't know. No one was prepared for all those things. Demonetization happened not in budget, but after the budget. So we don't know. All these things are also very, very critical. If we talk about digitalization, there was nothing in budget as such, but now see how we have panned out in terms of the transition from paper currency to all digital currency. So we don't know, but I'm sure this has been losing its relevance. But it has to be given definitely some date, some time, saying okay, we will announce what is the progress for our overall economy. And this is one such day which has been designated, saying okay, these are our income, these are our expenses. But I'm sure as things progress, we will get to know what is in for us. Finance Minister, overall ministry will look into it, and as and when deemed fit, we will see the announcement coming in. Yeah, for any other sector specific as well.
Right. And, taking from that, again, one of the bigger themes that emerged this time during the announcement was that the initiatives undertaken as part of this budget will really have a transformative impact on the Indian economy. Is that the case? What do we need to keep our eyes on there?
So I would say, we have to understand the parameter which actually lead the economic transformation. The biggest multiplier to a GDP is actually investment, which is capex. And if you look at last 5-7 years, the quantum of capex done by government has gone up unprecedentedly. Now, but the last 2 years, 3 years, if you look at FY 24-25, our capex as a percentage of GDP has peaked around 3.1, 3.2%, more or less. Now, there's a limit to which government can go ahead and do the capex work in a given time period. The area which we were lacking, especially, was on the private capex side. Now, I think the government is giving a clear signal in this budget that we have to go ahead and revamp this methodology, and we should work more in a public-private partnership where the government is giving you the facilitator and the whole ecosystem, and private players would come in ahead. That will give the major transformation to the economy. The second transformation comes when government spend, apart from capex, which has a higher multiplier compared to what we have seen in this time. Now, the third thing, which is where we have seen huge tax saving by these people, obviously it will also have a multiplier, but much lower than the capex and when the government spend. So if you look at our economy, which was growing around 8% for the last 2 or 3 years, suddenly see a slowdown coming.
Yeah.
And when you go deeper in the slowdown, it was more to do with an urban and private capex not picking up. Even credit in the economy is showing some slowdown sign. So I think government has done a very tactical move by helping middle class consumers to revive, give them their due share of their credit. At the same time, revive the economy in the same time. It will not be a long-lasting impact. It can possibly have an impact of, say 1 year. Post that, the private credit, private capex has to pick up for us to go back to 8% kind of a number.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up actually, because then, Rahul, in that case, will this budget really boost our economy as a whole, or is it going to be incremental changes? What exactly are we looking at in terms of, the growth of the economy?
Few sectors will definitely get an immediate positive impact because there's a clear visibility about something which is disposable. And we have seen that in the stock market as well. But end of the day, we look at the corporate results, we look at the economic number, we look at the GST collection. Overall, those are very, very important factors. And to that extent, there are no big changes that had been announced on those fronts. If that is not going to happen, I don't think so it is going to be a big positive for any particular sector apart from a short-term boost for the consumption. Again, consumption is a very, very vast theme. In consumption, you may say toothpaste or a detergent, the consumption for that, I don't know, will it go up or no? But will you go for a movie or someone who was just looking at, so can I start spending more because of the aspiration of saying, okay, I want to actually go for a movie, but I was cutting short because of the cash crunch or the salaries and stuff like that. You start to think those smaller spending, but it is good for those particular company. But as an economy, theater is not a very, very large sector.
Yeah.
It may be a big front page item, but it is not a very, very vast sector. Now, anything that has been announced for manufacturing, now this 10,000 rupees may not be good enough for a manufacturing sector or a steel sector or for a IT sector. So it's a very, very short-term stuff according to me. But corporate numbers and GST numbers and GDP numbers are more critical according to me.
Yeah, and also until the caramel popcorn GST goes down, I don't think people will be going for
surprise. Nothing of those sort has come in this time.
Yeah.
Something which is more powerful, impactful has come in, which is a good thing.
And again, let's end today's episode with another burning question that usually comes up is what are the initiatives and reforms that, the budget has brought with it? So this union budget, what are we looking at in terms of initiatives and reforms?
Government has categorically reduced the importance of budget as a platform to announce reforms, right? So even in this budget, there were technically no reforms per se. One area which I believe the government has taken initiative upon is simplifying the whole taxation process, removing the, I would say, bureaucratic-led slowdown in the system. Like we have this new direct tax bill coming next week. They said, it categorically mentioned in the budget that this will be half the size of the pages is technically half of it. So yeah, all this simplification is the right initiative. I think they focus on ease of doing business. Right, I tell you, when this government came, there were less than 1,000 startups. Today, after 11 years, we are almost close to 140,000 startups. Out of this, there will be 140 or unicorns. Unicorn is basically a company with $1 billion market cap. That time, we had less than 30 unicorns. So that thing government has understood as an accelerator, and that simplification will have a far-reaching implication on a positive side. I can tell you. So if you remember, I've been listening to budget for like many years. And you used to get lost. This time, even if you see the budget for the last 3-4 years, 1 hour, 10 minutes, and it's over. Yeah, there are no technicalities that you have to use. Just read the bill, and so I think that is the best initiative government has bring up, and there is lesser of fear and more of constructive, assertive point which come up on the budget.
I think which is what investors and foreign investors need. They don't need those one fine day some big bang things comes up and everyone see this as a surprise event, because you cannot trade, you cannot invest for long term, because if every year you keep getting sector specific shocker or policy regime change, which is something we don't want.
Right.
And if that is not happening, no bad news is good news as such. These are small incremental things. But this time, the saving piece is a big one. But otherwise, reform per se, I don't think so. You want every year some or the other things keeps on changing. So it's a good thing.
Okay, and then I just want to throw a little bit of a curveball at you, just for fun. But and this is a question for both of you. When you were watching the union budget announcement this time around, was there any one thing in particular that really surprised you that you just couldn't believe you were hearing? I'd love to hear that from both of you.
As for me, the three most important thing was I wanted to know the capex figure for the government.
Okay.
Whether they will be able to manage the fiscal prudence and anything new which comes through. So when I go through it, I think the three most important thing was obviously the consumption thing, which I was not expecting. It was a big one. And what I liked about is that they have done it without really, adversely impacting their fiscal prudence. So if you see from COVID days, I think fiscal deficit as a percent of GDP, I think is very, very critical price in economy. And they have been able to bring it to 4.4%. They have reduced it by 80 bips. This financial year, next year, they expected to go out below another 40 bips. So that was the second most important thing. And capex is what? So a lot of people are now talking about that this budget is more consumption, less capex, because we've been hearing about capex story for the last 3-4 years. We are used to that. We have seen a decent allocation to capex, but the consumption has stolen the theme on the show, if I may say so. So even if we see in the market today, there was a lot of pressure on this capital goods stocks and all of that. But I believe government understand the importance of capex in GAM 2020.
So I was looking at if there are any changes in the capital market taxation, because it got increased from 10 to 12.5, and it seems a very odd number. I thought this could go to the round figure number. But that had unhappened. So capital gains was one. Then obviously you keep waiting for the last fag end of the budget, wherein they announced the personal income tax, and that actually not only to me but entire floor in our office, everyone was so happy the moment she announced that, and we were like, okay, is this the final one, and is there any terms and condition applied? But I think we have read there was nothing in that was the second. Third is we also keep looking at it, which asset class could be tax efficient if there are any tax benefits that has been given. And I want to highlight ULIP, for example, insurance. They have changed small bit. I don't think so it is there in the paper, emphasized too much on it. But they have actually, when I read it, there is some kind of a small benefit that they have given for the insurance sector as such. So we look at the taxation front, and to that extent, I think this time it was positive.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a wrap on part 1 of this episode. We're doing a 2-parter because, when it comes to a budget breakdown, there's quite a bit to discuss. And while we've touched upon the general overview of, the budget and its impact this year, I'm sure as investors, you're wondering, how does this impact me? Well, that's the question and many more that we're going to be tackling in part 2. So stay tuned because we'll be coming to you very shortly.
That was an episode of the Simmply Lovaii podcast series, Expert with a Heart.